screen there. But that does mean also that you can see it again later if you'd like to, but if you'd like to be more anonymous, if you'd ask any questions, then you can change your name or you can turn your video off. But this is being recorded. So yes, welcome to the first part of the Know Your Series Coast, the Know Your Coast series. This is a series of online events that have been organized by Gala from Ulster Wildlife and myself from the Northern Ireland Fishery and Harbour Authority, and also with some guest speakers. So we're going to be exploring the themes of environment, biodiversity, and community that are relevant to our coastal communities. So starting off from that, it would have been very easy to make a series that was just about challenges. With the climate crisis, biodiversity loss, and impacts of the pandemic, all extremely apparent at the moment. And these unavoidably and rightfully will be discussed. But what we want to do is we want to find and demonstrate that there are actions that we can take in our own lives and communities that can have a positive impact for people and planet. So at the end of each of our events, we will leave you with some calls to action. So some ideas of things that you can really do. We're going to start you off with a poll just to find out a little bit about what you guys, what you're interested is of being here. So Gala, if you could share that poll. I'm going to keep talking and let's see. You guys want to just take a second to read through the poll. Make sure you pick whichever one. You can pick multiple choices as well. It's cool. I have the results coming in live.
No, it's pretty impressive. I've muted myself here just not to bother, but yes, I can hear you.
Perfect. Okay, so right. What are we going to be talking about today? So first of all, we're going to have introductions from myself and Gala introducing Ulster Wildlife and the Northern Ireland Fishery Harbour Authority. We'll talk a bit about the UN Sustainable Development Goals, or the SDGs, I might call them. Think Global, Act Local. After that, we'll speak with Jenna from Made in Mourne, which I'm very excited about. And finally, I will leave you with that call to action. And somewhere around the end there, we'll also have some time for questions.
Do you want me to share the results of the poll, or yeah?
I think, should we share them at the end? Is that okay?
I don't know if that will work, but okay. Yeah, maybe we could. I'll try and make that work. Okay.
Or we can, I can, oh, hold on, let's see.
No, it's okay. We can do it at the end.
Yeah, okay, let's do it at the end. Okay. Next slide. So Gala, this is over to you.
Hi everyone, so I'm Gala, I'm the Living Seas Officer at Ulster Wildlife. So we just, at every session, because we don't know which of you will be joining more sessions, we just thought we'll introduce the NI Fishery Harbour Authority and then Ulster Wildlife as well. So I work for Ulster Wildlife, which is Northern Ireland's largest local nature conservation charity. And we have we're founded over 40 years ago. So we are one of the 46 independent wildlife trusts across the UK. And together we kind of have this, trying to have a stronger voice for nature. We're driven and supported by over 14,000, I wish it was 40,000, 14,000 passionate members in Northern Ireland. And a lot of our unrestricted funds, which the members support, actually support our work. We wouldn't be able to do our work without the members. Thanks. So things that we do, we save species under threat. So we have barn owls that we look after, red squirrels, we focus on particular species, or we usually try to protect and restore places for wildlife. So like a larger habitat, such as the next photo, if you could click, Jenny. So like Peatlands Park or Wildlife Meadows or the Culca Mountain, so raised bogs, whatever is really valuable for the environment and supports a lot of different species and gives back to us by either like bogs can do, like taking away the CO2 from the atmosphere in times of climate change. We also try to bring people closer to nature. So we do a lot of fun activities like snorkel safaris, or this photo in particular is from a rock pool ramble where we just go around with kids and adults and look into rock pool rambles, what kind of species you can find. So I'm talking now about the Living Seas, what we do, but obviously every project across both land and sea in Ulster Wildlife has their own kind of engagement activities. And we'll talk to you about that in the last part of the series, the 4th talk on 10th of April. And lastly, what we try to do is influence government policy, not to forget the environment with whatever new policies come up or with the new climate bill and so forth. We're never trying to, we're not activists, so we're not trying to push, tree hugging or just environment. It's a community thing, and the largest part of our work, even though we're focused on nature, is actually working with communities. So that would be just, this is, I guess, why we're here today, talking about communities with Jenny will start. I'll pitch that back to you, Jenny. So I'll talk to you in the next series.
Thanks, Gala. I should also say that if you have any questions for Gala or I throughout any of this, could you type them in the chat? Gala will look at those and we'll answer them at the end. But if you want to do that while we're going, we will look at those at the end. So I work with the Northern Ireland Fishery Harbour Authority. We are an executive non-departmental public body. So we are actually a government body. We've been around for nearly 50 years, but of course, the actual harbours and the fishing industry has been around for much, much longer than that. There are records of Ardglass Harbour flourishing as early as the 1100s. We have a couple of main mandates at the main commercial fishing harbours of Portavogie, Ardglass and Kilkeel. Firstly, we look after the long-term repair and renewal of our harbour infrastructure. And secondly, we look after the actual day-to-day operations of the harbours. And those are managed by our harbour masters. With International Women's Day just gone by, I'd like to make a special shout out to our harbour master in Kilkeel, Danielle, because she is a really inspiring leader down there running the harbour. And across these lovely 3 harbours, we have approximately 150 registered fishing vessels, and through either directly through the fishing industry or through any of the ancillaries, through the processing plants and other related services, that is, we're employing the scale of thousands of people in Northern Ireland. So start with the end in mind. This actual series was born out of objectives. Firstly, Gala and I sat down and we decided that we wanted to connect with the communities we work with. And secondly, we're passionate about environmental education and all the associated actions that come with that. So we wanted people to know and feel empowered that they can actually do something to impact their local community and environment. So those were our goals, and this series is actually the vehicle for those goals. Having those goals in mind actually did inform what we are actually choosing to talk about, and the fact that these talks are taking place at all. So that is what we sort of call goal or outcome, an outcome-based method for doing something. Slightly differently, but something you might identify with. You may work for a company and they may have some kind of corporate plan, and they might have things in that like their vision and their mission. And I know from experience that a lot of times people sort of eye roll that kind of things and gloss over it. But I'm afraid that I actually get very excited about things like that. I really think that they can be extremely powerful. And yeah, being able to picture and articulate what it is you're actually aiming for and trying to achieve gives you a lot of clarity. So you actually know why you're doing something. So yeah, it's a very big statement to be able to say like what it is you believe in, what you really want to achieve. So that means that as you're going along, the actions you choose to take can be directed. They can actually be things that you choose to make sure they're actually going to get you to where you want to be. So the goals of this series, the goals of your company, are tiny compared to the goals that we're thinking about for the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. We're talking about this on a global scale. So for sustainable development, it is literally encapsulating a seriously big picture. So we're talking about, what is the vision for the world? So before we get on to the sustainable development goals, we need to look at what is sustainable development. So the widely recognized definition, development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. So a couple of things to unpick in that. We've got development, which implies motion. It implies change, it implies doing something. Needs, it's a bit of an ambiguous term. We could debate that for a long time, but whatever it does mean, it cannot be so much that we are jeopardizing others to have it, either today or in the future, which is the future generations bit. So this also spans time, that we today affect the future. So in summary, I think it's a little bit of a question. How do we live and evolve today so that our children can live just as well as we do? Now, what does that look like? So now we're trying to paint this picture, right? Right, so similar to the way that we made a vision for our company, similar to the way that we had goals for this talk, we want to paint a picture of what a good life, a good planet looks like. Can we imagine, identify the sustainable world that we are aiming for? In the statement released when the Sustainable Development Goals were signed, it said that they were for people, planet, prosperity, peace, and partnership. Okay, so that is a big mouthful of peas, but it nicely sums up the wide range of objectives. But these are very broad ideas. So if you were trying to write the vision for this planet, what would it include? It is something that is so enormous and so complex, so many different types of issues. It's it's a really, really difficult question. What kind of specific things do you think sustainable development are aiming for? So wherever you are, I'd like you to do two things. Either you can jot it down on a bit of paper or just hold this in your mind. First, I'd like you to think of a number. How many sustainable development goals are there? How many different aspects are there of this picture? You might already know, which is brilliant. And if you don't, note down a number. Secondly, what do you think occupies place number one? What do you think the first sustainable development goal is? Just give you a second to think about that and hold that in your brain. Okay. So there are 17 sustainable development goals. You can imagine how difficult it must have been for the people who were planning this to sit down and decide on that. They actually started off with about, when they were planning it, something like 300 before they eventually whittled it down and made it into the shape that it is now, which is 17. And that is a very, very colorful, very wide, very diverse global picture. That is that sort of vision for what we're aiming for. Making it articulate and concise and thorough is one of the things that makes this such a special document. And sitting in first place, goal number one is to end poverty in all its forms everywhere. So I wish I could gauge who knew all these things already and who's surprised by what, but poverty is actually our first sustainable development goal. So we do still have extreme poverty in the world. The rate has largely been falling for a number of years, but the COVID pandemic, unfortunately, has set this goal back quite significantly. They say on the website that's an extra 71 million people in extreme poverty from last year. So not doing very well in hitting that one at the moment. So although they're not in sort of descending order of importance, it does occupy a it's very prominent place as goal one there. So here we have this picture. This is the vision of a sustainable world. If you sort of read through those, we've got a really wide range of subjects. Some are very people-centered. We've got poverty, good health and well-being, education, gender equality, decent work and economic growth, and reduced inequalities. Some are much more sort of planet-based, with energy, responsible consumption, climate action, life below water, and life on land. Some that are prosperity-based, which pull lots of them together. Overall, they do a lot of overlapping in terms of what they're aiming for, which actually makes a lot of sense. So we've got 17 goals. Within each of these, they have specific targets and indicators. So 17 goals, there's 169 targets and 230 indicators, which makes overall for an extremely wide and actually very radical agenda for change. So these targets are set to be met by 2030. This was set in 2015. It was a 15-year program. My big takeaway from this is really that the welfare of people and the planet are one. We need both. We really need both of these things to be moving forward for sustainable development. So they have been a long time coming as well. Back in 1972, in Stockholm was the first ever conference where the United Nations members recognized that basically the environment and economy were kind of on a collision course. That was largely sparked by the publication of Limits to Growth, which was the first computer model that actually showed that after a few decades, if we continued growing and acting and behaving as we are, that we would overwhelm the physical Earth systems. So that was a little bit of a shock for people back then. The Brundtland Commission, they helped define what sustainability means back in '87. And in Rio, the Earth Summit, 20 years after the conference in Stockholm, is when they actually adopted the concept of sustainable development as a shared global concept. So at that stage, it had 3 multilateral environmental agreements focused on climate change, biodiversity, and desertification. The Millennium Development Goals came around in 2020. There was 8 of these, and they were centered around fighting poverty. So they were adopted similar to the 2015 goals for 15 years, from the year 2000 to the year 2015. So 2015 is really the sort of refresh of the Millennium Development Goals, but actually widening the scope to include a lot of those environmental aspects. It's actually, that's the moment where they're really bringing together the sort of people and planet aspects. And one of the reasons that they are so important is that they are universally accepted. It's a big deal. It's great to have good ideas and plans, but then to actually get every nation in the world to say, yes, I agree on those plans is like that's a big accomplishment. So 2015 was a really, really huge year. Those 17 sustainable goals were adopted by the United Nations. So they've agreed to this radical change and very actually positive, optimistic look at the future. Whether or not we're all acting towards getting there is another question, but it's right to know that we're aiming for the right thing. And then a little bit later, just a few months later in the year, we actually had the Paris Climate Agreement. So yeah, I think, this is the core of the Sustainable Development Goals, is to actually move us towards sustainable development, what we were saying. And I should say that the Sustainable Development Goals are not perfect. They can be ambiguous in places, which means they can be misinterpreted. Sometimes they contradict each other. You might not agree with some of the aspects in there, and some things you think maybe should be in there that aren't. And you might say that they're too aspirational and quite far removed from reality. So for me, I think those uncertainties are actually much less significant in the fact that, at least in principle, the world has accepted a shared vision for what we're actually aiming for and where we want to go. And the climate agenda is particularly important because we are hosting the United Nations Climate Change Conference this year in Glasgow. So important things to think about. So in practice, it is actually very hard, but having this framework there at all is actually very important, that we have this defined aim that we're aiming for. So who is responsible? No one and everyone. So that's actually, there's no one particular group or person that's in charge of delivering these goals, but that is a bit of a cop-out. Really, it is a multi-stakeholder process. So the government have a big role. They're the one who's committed to this, and they do things. They've committed to getting to net zero by 2050, which might not be soon enough, but that's all right. Business can play a role, academia, as well as ourselves. We're actually major actors in this picture. So what can we do? We can demand that these sustainable development goals are prioritized. We can actually communicate with our government, with our businesses, and say, this is important. This is where we're aiming for. We can also take on some consumer activism. So what we actually consume and how we consume what we buy does have an impact. So we can actually adopt ourselves a goal-based method for living our lives. So that is literally using the Sustainable Development Goals to guide how we live, how we purchase. Because what we actually, whether we're thinking about it or not, what we are doing is having an impact on these goals. So on here, I've got a few on the left-hand side, which are slightly more people-centered, a little bit prosperity-centered in the middle, and planet-centered there on the right. So there's just some, me thinking about what impacts do I have day to day when I'm going out buying things. So you can think of things like, the carbon impact of when you're buying something. For example, if you are buying fresh produce and it was produced outside of Europe, it's most probably been flown here and has an enormous carbon footprint. Conversely, you'd have a much smaller carbon impact if you went out and bought a local bag of spuzz and some Portavogie prawns. If you can also look at the sort of like in the people-centered sphere, are we buying things that are supporting modern slavery, or are we buying things that actually, increase people's access to decent work and good jobs? So all of these things are there. There's not a perfect formula for how to do this, but I do believe that if you act so that, in a way that you're actually aiming for something, that really is the way to be more sustainable. So while the Sustainable Development Goals are set at a global level, I think that we really do have the same priorities. These same goals actually provide a really useful framework for us as individuals as well. So we can adopt in our daily lives a goal-based method of thinking. And it is, in fact, often the case that when we consume more locally, that we do have a smaller carbon footprint, that we support sustainable and decent jobs. It can be good for our health, and you can buy from people who have used decent supply chains going back. So I think that we can use the Sustainable Development Goals to think global, and we can use them to act locally as well. So that brings us on very nicely. If you see down here in the bottom, we've got Made in Mourne on this lovely map, this map of local businesses in Northern Ireland. So that is going to bring me on to our lovely Gemma. So I'm sure, I hope that some of you guys have questions on my presentation. If you do, please do type them in the chat. And I think we will take them after we've had a chat with Gemma, and you can ask all of us questions if that's okay. So could we get Gemma on?
Am I unmuted now, Emma?
Yes, you are.
Yeah.
Sorry, the phone is ringing in the background, so it might be a bit distracting. Somebody's not going to give up. But yeah, so I don't know how many suppose know. I see a few familiar faces on there know about Made in Mourne and was even involved in the startup of Made in Mourne. But Made in Mourne is a social enterprise that helps inspire, support, and enable our local entrepreneurs and to build sustainable business within the local area. And how we do that, obviously we have a premises in the Kilkeel area and we have a shop on the ground floor, and in that shop we support 70 local makers, and that by spending £1 in here, that 70% of that money goes back within to the community, and therefore then it spends within the local Mourne region. So it supports them, it gives them the opportunity to sell their products, test their products, and we're inclusive to everybody. So whether that maker makes 2 items or whether they have a production line that maybe makes 1,000 within the week, we bring everybody in because it's an opportunity for them to collaborate and work together and maybe learn from each other as well. So just different processes and gives them the opportunity to learn. So we've been going since 2017, and whenever we originally set up the shop, we had 20 makers, and now we have 70. So it's been a build a stronger maker profile as we've gone on. So obviously with COVID and stuff, it has been an interesting journey because we've had to close the shop, but we've still been able to sell online for our makers. So that's kind of been a bit of a lifeline for them, because a lot of them haven't been entitled to grants or funding. And we've still been able to give back to our community through generating sales online, and we've been shipping them obviously local within the community throughout Northern Ireland and also overseas as well. We just sent 400 hampers over to Washington DC for the St. Patrick's celebration, so that's been really good. And also we employ 4 girls within the shop, and even though the retail shop is closed, they've still been able to have their jobs because they've been doing the online side of things. The other side of the business then is the hub area, which we house 9 residents, as I call them, so 9 entrepreneurs, 9 business owners, and they are based here. So we have affordable space that they can come in and use. There's a communal area that they can all meet up for coffee, chat, collaborate, make connections. And then we would have individuals dropping into that space to use the Wi-Fi and stuff like that. Or we have meeting rooms that they can use as well. So it's a real positive energy, like-minded individuals coming together within this environment. So every day is very different, and it's very exciting there. And I suppose why does Made in Mourne exist today is probably to do with my experience personally as an entrepreneur within the Mourne region. I obviously went through school. I think I see one of my teachers on there too. I wasn't really interested in school. I always knew I wanted to have my own business. So I kind of just made choices that were available to me. So I then graduated in sports and exercise physiology because I was interested in health and fitness. After that, I went traveling around the world, seeing the opportunities, worked in an olive grove. I then started importing the olive oil and balsamic vinegars from Australia. I was down at St. George's Market every Saturday. And this was before kind of the artisan products buy local trend came onto the market. And I seen how difficult and physically experienced how difficult it was for these local makers to get their products to market. I then set up my own business, which was Bite to Savor. And that was a hamper company where we curated local food items into hampers and sold that online and through retail spaces in Belfast. Now, my business was mainly based in Belfast, and whenever a baby number 1, obviously that was fine, running up and down the road. Baby number 2, it just wasn't as sustainable. And I think I then at that point had to move the business back to Kilkeel, and I was in a barn in the middle of a field, per Wi-Fi, per working conditions, isolated, not communicating. And like, entrepreneurs need people around them because we don't have the we don't have the employees around us, or that if you're working for a factory or if you're working for, some sort of system, that you don't have that connections with people. So I then set up the Mourne Entrepreneurs Network, where there's only 5 or 6 of us, maybe met on a monthly basis, like-minded individuals. We all had the same experience. We're all working in barns in the middle of fields and per Wi-Fi, per working conditions. So we just shared our problems. We seen that there was an opportunity to come together to solve our problems. And then the space came available in Kilkeel. And at the time, I was actually working down at the Harbour, and that kind of gave me, I suppose, the confidence to do what I have done with Made in Mourne. And we went out with a vision of creating this creative hub within Kilkeel and supporting these local entrepreneurs. And I pitched it to local business owners and businesses around the local area, and they very much were supportive of what we wanted to achieve. And within 98 days, we had Made in Mourne open. Now, we got a lot of support, whether it was financial support, physical support, as in labour support to set the space up, Like the till area was donated by local kitchen fitters, Remrock Kitchens. The stud work was donated by James Knox and Sons. And I think if you put a financial, if you put a figure on that, we raised, about £25,000 from our local community to set up Maiden Mourne. So there was a real energy, and and I suppose the difference of this project, other projects within the local area, they seen it was going to happen. There, it was such a tight and quick time frame, within opening within 98 days. So we opened the shop, like I say, with 20 people, and we then started all our rooms are filled at this point as well, and we really want to get into the detail of that, as in help our businesses and entrepreneurs grow. So COVID has been a great opportunity for us to really work on our strategy and vision and where we want to go as an organization, and really how we are going to make an impact is give our entrepreneurs kind of the tools and that they need to build sustainable businesses, and that they know how to run their business in a way to make money and employ people and just all the tools to do that. So we're going to hopefully run programs around that, mentorship, coaching. We have so many people that have built their businesses in this local area, and so we can use their experience and share that experience within our hub through our networking events and meetups and stuff like that. So that's where we're at the minute. So I think I've covered everything. If you want to ask some questions, Jenna.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, can you hear me?
I can, yeah.
Yeah, okay. I mean, you guys do so much. That is an extraordinary sort of like list of outreach that you guys are involved in. Have you found that the local community, apart from the people who are sort of your members, wider than that, have been responsive and receptive? And have you seen that change since, I believe you said, we were speaking before, that it's 3 years that you've been open?
Yeah.
Have you seen any change from
well, definitely
customers?
our sales have grown every year, 5% a year. And actually, I think COVID has really helped to our advantage, because I think it has allowed people to stop and think and realize what they are buying and where their money is going. So that has helped us, and we have seen a significant growth, which I'm sure a lot of people maybe haven't within the COVID or 2020, whether that is online. Now, we just launched we were lucky enough to have our website launched, and we did about 14,000 of sales online. 5.5 of that was within a month, just in November. Now that to some people is quite a large figure, to others it's quite small for an online opportunity, but we see that as a massive it's a great way to start, but we really want to be doubling that this year. We have to double it.
Wow.
It's to really make an impact within our local community, because we are completely unfunded, so we just generate our revenue through the commission of the sales, the rent of the residents, and invest that money back into our community. And then whenever we were open in November and December, our sales, I think we've seen a 20% increase in the retail shop. It was just so busy, maybe, and because people weren't shopping in Belfast, they were shopping within their local communities, and therefore it has a bigger impact within, because we're small independent businesses in Kilkeel, especially. Like if they were shopping in Belfast, it would be going to large organisations like the House of Fraser, and which are more suppose UK based organisations, whereas by spending £1 in your local community has so much more impact to that individual. So that's where we're at.
Yeah, because I think that's was one of a fairly universal observation that I've had, and I've spoken to a lot of people about, is that it has been a spark for people to look a little bit closer to home and really appreciate the things that we have, because we actually have a really rich, interesting array of different businesses, different activities, lovely parks and lovely coastline. But some of those like smaller organizations have gone above and beyond to make sure that they're still delivering to get people their products. But I'm so happy to hear that you guys have been doing well out of that. I think that there's a lot of companies.
We haven't got it perfect yet.
No, that's part of development. Everything's always changing. It's all about trying to change in the right direction. But I know a lot of companies and people have really struggled that, some retailers, like the markets being closed, has meant they haven't been able to reach as many people. And, a lot of people who are actually in, I guess, non-entrepreneurial, who have a job, who are employed by an employer, have also lost their jobs recently. But I think that, your story is very inspiring in that, there might be space, there might be growing space for people to actually be entrepreneurs and actually do something themselves. And that's actually not just about having an entrepreneurial local economy. What that really means is jobs. That's
and I think this is actually something that we're very strong in the Kilkeel area. I'm going to be quite biased here, but I think the term entrepreneur is only a new trend, obviously, within Northern Ireland and then within Kilkeel. So some people think, talking entrepreneur, what is she talking about? But everybody in Kilkeel, pretty much, I would say 80% of the population in Kilkeel is probably entrepreneurs, because they're all stonemasons, bricklayers, in the fishing industry, building boats. And I think we just need to, suppose, educate, what did an entrepreneur look like, suppose, 100 years ago in Kilkeel, and what does it look like today? And I would love to do that bit of research to, get people to understand it a wee bit more, that we're all here just trying to create opportunities. And I think that's one of the things that Made in Mourne does is create opportunities, and we take ideas from here to there and show people that it's possible, that can do it. And then just show you an example of what we did during lockdown is we actually created a book, which is Once Upon a Lockdown.
Awesome.
And this was just, there's two girls that work in Made in Mourne, and they're creative writers. One's a poet, one's a creative writer, and they had the idea of maybe engaging with their local community and the kids within the community. And we went out and asked them to draw pictures, and then the creative writers, wrote stories. So you can see the kids obviously drew picture, and then the stories then to accompany them. So I think there's 30 or 40 stories in there. And then our local designer, on the first floor, was able to put this book together. And then we had a young guy, aged 10, to design our front and back cover. And this was just, this was never meant to be a book, but it just grew into a book because the people, the energy, the positivity, the ability, the skills were there, and we all collaborated to make this happen. And I think that's what sums up what Made in Mourne is about. And this book is now listed in Waterstones, and also it is in the British Library. So it's, something really positive. So it's come out of something.
That is a phenomenal achievement. That is really, really awesome. It's great. And, I think that story will probably resonate.
We're not flying off the shelves, but we did it.
Hopefully some people will buy it off from today, because I'm sure there's a lot of people who, it's hard to explain this sort of strange time that we've been in for a while. So for kids who haven't been able to go to school and are wondering what the world's about, it's nice to be able to connect through stories. Interesting you say about entrepreneurship, because that, I was new into the fishing industry just, a few months ago, honestly. And I was very surprised by how entrepreneurial the fishermen are. There's actually really, I said 150 vessels. There are really 150 entrepreneurs. They're all doing their own thing, making their work and their space their own, trying different things. I was talking to a guy recently who's implementing the first sort of prawn conveyor belt in his boat. Apparently, he thinks he's the first one who's done it in Europe, and it means that they can process the prawns that much quicker, so they get out and they're fresher. They actually, less likely to, I know the sponsor's too small to die before they go out, so it helps him in loads of ways. And it's just, it's a happening, moving space, and that's part of what the sort of people aspect of sustainability is about too, is about that sort of sense of progress and having that decent work. So I've got one more question for you, Jenna, because I'm going to leave a little bit of time for Q&A if there's any from anybody else. Did you ever think of your work, what you're doing, as being a part of something that was much bigger? Did you ever think of this in the scale of what impacts you have on a global picture?
Yeah, 100%. I wouldn't be doing it if I didn't feel we weren't having an impact. I just think, you know, that it's all about people in place, and we're supporting them individuals to look, you know, at global opportunity, because long term, you know, what jobs are going to be available in the future? What does the world look like in the future? So we need to prepare ourselves for that resilience and an opportunity that needs to exist to be able to grow. And especially looking into the future, you know, I've got young kids, you know, what opportunities are going to be for them in the future? Obviously I went through the school system, and from an entrepreneurship, I didn't feel as if that support network was there for me as an individual. So this is why now we want to create Made in Mourne, to, you know, to inspire them individuals and to help support them and give them the skills needed to move their business and ideas forward into the future. So that's kind of,
yeah,
brilliant.
Hope that answers. No, absolutely, absolutely. I think it's just it's about having seeing yourself as being a part of something that's much bigger, and there's so many aspects that pulls in, and I think you actually, more than many people many different sort of organizations I've seen are very active and proactive in reaching out in lots of ways.
I must just add, a lot of people just see Made in Mourne as a shop. I think I had this conversation yesterday and don't realize just how much goes on behind closed doors and how much we offer, and that's something we need to work at. And you know, like I said, we haven't got it completely 100% right yet, but because we are learning, like we didn't get a textbook to actually say this is how it's done. So we are entrepreneurs ourselves and we're trying to build it. So hopefully into the future we can have more and more of an impact as we learn and learn how to engage with our community and help them.
Brilliant. Amazing. Gemma, Jenna, I'm going to keep you there and ask Gala, have we got any questions that anyone would like to ask for either myself or Jenna?
We have a few from the chat, so if you don't mind, I'll just read them from the start of the session forward, so it kind of follows the order that they came in. So first, James Smith, you had asked, did you want to ask something? You had raised your hand in the beginning and I couldn't get to you. Oh, so you're muted.
Sorry, that was accidental from something previous.
All right, okay, no worries, thanks. The next question was from Leslie saying, have you a view on what has been proposed for a number of years for the Kingdom of Mourne, a Mourne National Park? That's for Jenny, yeah?
Yeah, I think Jenna might have ideas about that too. It's her geography there. I think that it makes a lot of sense. I think that that's part of Northern Ireland connecting again with a bigger picture. That's, you know, that's joining a sort of structure that is something that people understand and recognize, and, you know, having that status actually promotes understanding and appreciation of our beautiful moorns, of the beautiful mountains. You know, it might also bring in more, I mean, it's very likely that it would bring in more visitors from people from further away, that they would see the Mourne Mountains on the map and say, actually, wow, I never really, maybe before that we didn't know that Northern Ireland had these beautiful mountains at all. It's easy to do if you don't come here and you don't look into it. So I think it would do nothing but provide benefits for the area. Jenna, do you have any comments on that? You don't have to if you don't want to, but.
It's not something, I remember at the time it was something I looked into, and I know there's a lot of farmers and stuff against it in this local area, but I do see it as a good opportunity for growth within the area, especially in the tourism industry, because obviously everything is diversifying and the farming industry is diversifying. So, but I don't know enough to probably go any further into the comment, but it's maybe something I should look into.
Okay, thank you.
The next question is from Trevor. Are there other similar initiatives in Northern Ireland? Oh, actually, there was a question before, so I'll come back to that one. Apologies. So are there other initiatives that are similar to this in Northern Ireland? And I think this is for Gemma. Jenna. Sorry.
And initiatives as in Made in Mourne's, the social, so is that the question? Just
yes, that's the question.
I think so.
Not that there is different individual support network. There's so much support for entrepreneurs in Northern Ireland, and there's a lot, like whether it's through Invest and the councils, the local colleges, there's incubators in Belfast. Mainly most of these are based in Belfast, and I have been through that system, and I have been on different programs with Invest and seeing that they weren't actually going out into communities. Everything is so focused around Belfast, so they weren't engaging with, and that's why also Made in Mourne exists today as well. So we can create this entrepreneurship ecosystem within the Mourne region that we can then plug and engage with the Belfast opportunity, so we that have that direct link, because it's obviously easier to have that one organisation linking with other opportunities than 100 people going at once. So it's kind of that collaborative approach.
That's great, thank you.
The question before that was from Deborah. On the NI map, I think this is for your presentation, Jenny. On the NI map, there were lots of colored pins. What did those pins mean?
So those pins, this is a map that someone made on Google. Let me see if I can. Which shows where different local companies are. I don't know. I actually don't know the methodology that they went through to use this, but I believe it's something that people can add to, because I know there's things out there that aren't on here too. And there was an article about it in the media a while ago that I saw and thought this is a really brilliant idea. We should be putting this out there so people know what they can find that's nearby to them. So the different colors are different types of organizations. You've got things like, food and beverage and services and, different types of things. Yeah, I'm sure that if anyone's interested, we could put that link to that map in the follow-up.
Yeah, I remember there was a link on Facebook that was shared with, buy local, and there was exactly that map. So we could definitely do that.
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry, there was a few more questions.
Okay, yeah, go ahead. Yeah, sure. I think maybe we have time for one more, because I want to do call to actions and let people go. So. Okay,
cool. No, okay. So Jenna, is Jenna still with us? Because I think
yes, yeah, I'm here.
Yeah,
I'm here.
Hi, Jenna.
I got cut off there.
So how important are the visitors to the local area to Made in Mourne? That's from Leslie.
Well, so obviously pre-COVID, within July and August, our sale, we couldn't survive, I suppose, without them local tourists coming to the area, whether they're from Northern Ireland coming down to shop, and support local and come into the shop, or just experience and connect with local individuals. Like, they come in here and they meet Wendy, and Wendy's telling them all the stories under the sun of what's happening, or where to go for a walk, or so we do engage quite heavily with the tourists and kind of give them that Mourne experience, or that Mourne welcome. And there's a lot of people that are connecting with their ancestors when they come here. We notice a lot of that. And I think even more so because we want to build that connection globally as well as locally. And I always talk about those that Northern Irish diaspora, so people who have left the local area overseas, and we want to connect them back into the Mourne area so we can tell them the good that's happened now and how they can invest back into the community. Because we need that outside investment, because it is unrestricted funds that we can make the most impact within the community. Like I have been out in America twice, and we did get a £10,000 donation from America to help sustain us. But sales wise, it's good. And then obviously if that person is coming here, what is the spend if they're staying in accommodation, going to the Camurray for something to eat, or that money that's spent in this local area has to be done to help survive, help us as a local economy. That's my opinion. But
Brilliant. Okay. Thank you very much, Jenna. Thank you so much for joining me today. You are another truly inspiring woman. You've accomplished a huge amount of what you've done with Maiden Mourne, and I'm sure that the impact on all of your partners and all of your members, is, it means a lot. So thank you very much for joining me today. I'm going to share my screen again, and we'll get to the conclusion here. Right. So I said that I would leave you guys with some calls to action. First of all, we've got a poll that you need to fill in. Gala, if you could put this poll in there, which you can do sort of as we're going. So my calls to action for you are to observe where what you are buying from is coming from. So in the next week, just do whatever you're doing, but make sure you pick up the label and look at where it is their products are coming from. And secondly, buy something that is grown, caught, or made within 10 miles of you, which is as far as you can go. And that counts even if it's online. I know Gemma's online, and there's beautiful chocolate being made in Kilkeel, and lovely peg dolls and things in Kilkeel. I should also mention that there is this gorgeous seafood that's right on our doorstep at the coast, and you can buy that locally from Northern Ireland fishermen. I know there's a shop in Kilkeel, the Seasource shop, that they do sell fish that are caught by our Northern Ireland fishermen, and it is also partially. It's a sort of cooperative structure, so part owned by the fishermen. So a great way to support those guys too. They do also deliver, so you can check out Seasource. So those are your two main call to action. If you guys want to all remember those, you can send me an email and let me know how you get on with them, because I'm not going to be, you won't be marked on them next week. And finally, make sure that you come back. Next week, we are going to be hearing from Gala. She's going to be looking a little bit in a greater depth at Goal 14 about life below water, although not framed like that, but just, she's a marine biologist, and that's promises to be extremely, extremely interesting. After that, we'll talk about marine plastic, and after that, we'll talk about more people who are in the community who are doing things to make things better. So I hope you guys enjoyed today. We have got this, the scene set. First, we were going to call part one, setting the scene, about the big picture of sustainability, about sustainable development, about having goals, about thinking about people and about planet, thinking of those things together. What are the problems? What are the solutions? Hopefully, we've given you a little bit today, some things that you can do and some things to think about. And I really do hope that you come back again next week. I think if everyone's had a chance to fill in the poll. Yeah.
Yes. So
okay.
I will. So almost everybody voted, or somebody's still voting? Okay, close it now. So I'll share I'll share the results just to see how the polls look like. So we're just wondering whether you learned something new today from this presentation, and it seems like most of you have, which is lovely. Has the session today inspired you to change something in your everyday life? And 85% have said yes. So woohoo, that's exactly what we wanted to hear. Thank you. And lastly, how much did you enjoy today's session? A lot, somewhat. So you can, at the follow-up email, we'll add a feedback form where you can say, give any comments. There's a lot to put in one session, I suppose. And as much as we would like to have, ideally representatives for each of the harbour towns and so many local businesses, there's only so much you can do in 1 hour. So this was just the start.
Yeah.
But yes, thanks from me as well for joining us.
I'm really, really happy to see that people are feeling inspired to change things. That's kind of the point. That was the point. That's us reaching our goals, which is great. So we hope to see you guys next week. Thank you so much again for joining us. And I hope you have a lovely weekend.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Jenny, do you want to